Is British Columbia still Canadian? Or has it quietly become a province dominated by Indians and Chinese, where scams, rising crime and housing chaos are pushing locals out of their own communities? Part 1. The demographic shift. British Columbia has always been one of Canada's most diverse provinces, but in recent years the pace of change has accelerated dramatically. Nearly 1 in 3 people living in BC today were born outside of Canada, a staggering figure compared to the national average. The most common countries of origin are India and China, and their presence has reshaped the face of the province in just a single generation. Between 2016 and 2021, almost 200,000 new immigrants settled in BC. Of these, around 1/5 came from India and nearly 1/6 from China. That means tens of thousands of new arrivals from just 2 countries within only 5 years, enough to visibly alter communities, schools and workplaces. South Asians now make up more than 14% of Metro Vancouver's population, with Surrey standing out at nearly 38% South Asian. Chinese Canadians, too, represent over 11% of the entire provincial population, concentrated heavily in Richmond, Burnaby and Vancouver. Together, these 2 groups alone account for hundreds of thousands of residents across the province. For long-time Canadians, the change feels overwhelming. Where once local businesses bore English or French names, now entire streets are lined with Punjabi and Mandarin signage. Neighborhoods that once had a distinctly Canadian character now feel foreign to those who grew up there. Parents notice the change in schools as well. Many Canadian-born children are now minorities in classrooms, where languages like Punjabi, Hindi and Mandarin dominate playground chatter. Some families feel their children are losing touch with Canadian identity because their peers are more connected to foreign traditions than local culture. Supporters of immigration argue that diversity enriches society, but critics counter that the balance has tipped too far, too quickly. Instead of blending into Canadian culture, some communities seem to operate in parallel, forming insular networks that leave Canadians on the outside looking in. This has created tension between groups. Locals feel replaced, not integrated with, and increasingly question whether their voices still matter in the province they call home. Many say they are being marginalized in their own country. The scale and speed of the demographic shift is what unsettles people most. Change was expected, but not at such a rate that entire neighborhoods feel unrecognizable within a single decade. For some, BC's identity is slipping away, replaced by cultures that dominate rather than coexist. There is also growing frustration that these concerns aren't discussed openly. Mainstream discourse often dismisses them as racist or xenophobic, leaving locals silenced. Yet in everyday life the pressure is undeniable, whether in jobs, housing, or simply walking down a street that feels less familiar every year. For many Canadians, the question is no longer if British Columbia is changing, but whether it will still feel like Canada at all in the future. Part 2. The housing and AMP, real estate takeover. If there's one crisis that defines British Columbia today, it's housing. For years, Vancouver has been ranked one of the most unaffordable cities in the world. The median house price is more than 10 times the average household income, and locals blame a flood of investment from abroad for fueling this crisis. Chinese buyers have been particularly influential in shaping BC's real estate market. In some years, they were estimated to account for nearly a third of property purchases in Vancouver, driving billions of dollars into the market. Many of these properties sit empty, used not as homes, but as safe havens for offshore wealth. On the other side, Indian investors dominate the resale and rental markets. Many operate within community-based networks, ensuring that properties remain within circles of buyers who share language and cultural ties. Canadians who lack these connections often find themselves shut out of competitive bidding. The provincial government has attempted to rein in foreign ownership through measures like the foreign buyer tax. While this temporarily slowed purchases from abroad, housing prices remain sky high, showing that the problem is far deeper than a single policy fix. The situation for renters is no better. Rising demand and speculative ownership have pushed rents upward, making it nearly impossible for young Canadians to establish independence. Stories abound of families cramming into tiny apartments while foreign-owned mansions sit empty. This is not just about economics, it's about dignity. Parents who worked their whole lives to buy homes in BC are now watching their children forced to move to cheaper provinces, scattering families apart. The dream of passing down a home to the next generation has evaporated. Even middle-class professionals cannot compete. Teachers, nurses and police officers, people who should comfortably afford homes, are priced out. They find themselves commuting long distances or leaving BC altogether. Scandals involving money laundering through BC's casinos only worsen public anger. Billions in dirty money have reportedly passed through the system, much of it tied to foreign buyers who then poured those funds into property. For locals, this feels like the province has been sold to the highest bidder. What was once a market for Canadians has become an investment tool for outsiders. Locals now wonder if they'll ever regain control of their own housing supply. The housing crisis is no longer simply a financial problem, it's a cultural wound. For Canadians, losing the ability to own a home means losing their stake in the very land their families built. Part 3. Jobs and AMP. Hiring biased. Jobs are another sore point for locals. Industries that once offered reliable work are now dominated by immigrant communities, leading to growing claims of hiring bias. In the trucking industry, Indian ownership is overwhelming. Companies are often family-run or network-based, hiring almost exclusively within their own circles. Canadian-born workers applying for these jobs say they are routinely ignored, leaving them sidelined in their own job market. Healthcare tells a similar story. In roles like personal support workers and nursing aides, immigrants from India and the Philippines dominate. While Canada needs workers in these sectors, locals argue that they're often pushed aside by managers who prioritize cultural familiarity over fair opportunity. Chinese-owned businesses also contribute to this dynamic. Many shops, construction companies and retail outlets employ primarily Chinese-speaking staff, making it difficult for outsiders to even apply. Unless you know the language or have personal connections, opportunities are slim. The problem isn't just perception. Statistics show that many Canadian-born young people are underemployed compared to their education levels, while newcomers often find work quickly. The gap fuels resentment, creating the sense that the system itself favors immigrants. For locals, the frustration isn't about hard work. Canadians are willing to work, but they feel the hiring process is increasingly unfair. Jobs that should go to the best candidate instead go to the best connected within immigrant networks. This creates a vicious cycle. As industries become dominated by one group, they become harder for outsiders to break into. Over time, locals feel like permanent outsiders in their own workforce. Beyond economics, this impacts pride and identity. Canadians want to contribute, to feel valued. Being shut out of industries they once sustained leaves them feeling invisible. This isn't just a job market issue, it's a question of belonging. If locals can't even find work in their own province, what claim do they have left to the future? Part 4. Crime, Scams and AMP. corruption. Scams and crime add another layer of frustration to the immigration debate in BC. High-profile cases of fraud, gang violence and money laundering are linked to transnational networks tied to India and China. In Surrey, shootings and drug-related violence tied to Indo-Canadian gangs have become tragically common. Families who once considered the area safe now worry about their children's safety just walking home from school. Meanwhile, Chinese money laundering through casinos has made global headlines. Billions of dollars passed through BC's casinos in recent years, much of it suspected to be tied to organized crime. That dirty money flowed straight into real estate, inflating prices even further. Phone scams and immigration fraud are also rampant. Canadians, particularly seniors, lose millions each year to call centres based abroad, often in India. These scams not only drain finances, but also erode trust in everyday life. For many, the problem isn't that crime exists, it's that it feels unchecked. Locals watch as investigations drag on and few meaningful convictions follow. The perception is that authorities are powerless or unwilling to act. This lack of accountability deepens distrust. Canadians see a double standard. Ordinary citizens punished swiftly for small infractions, while large-scale fraudsters and organized criminals escape justice. Safety is now a daily concern. Parents talk to their children about avoiding gangs. Seniors are afraid to pick up the phone. Communities install more locks and cameras, no longer trusting the province to protect them. The rise in crime feels like the final straw. When jobs and housing are already out of reach, adding fear of violence or fraud makes locals feel surrounded by chaos. BC's reputation as a safe, welcoming province is being replaced with a new one, a place where corruption thrives and locals pay the price. For many, this is proof that the province they loved has slipped into disorder. Part 5. Political influence and silence. If Canadians are frustrated, part of the blame lies with their leaders. Politicians in BC appear unwilling to confront these issues head-on, leaving locals to feel abandoned. Indian and Chinese communities have become powerful voting blocs. In cities like Surrey and Richmond, their numbers are enough to decide elections. Politicians know this and are careful not to alienate them. This creates political silence. Housing, hiring bias and crime are all pressing issues, yet they are rarely addressed in direct terms. Leaders tiptoe around them, fearful of backlash. To locals, this is betrayal. They feel their concerns are ignored for the sake of political convenience. Instead of protecting long-term residents, politicians cater to groups that can deliver votes. Policies that could ease the housing crisis or address corruption are often watered down. Proposals to regulate hiring or foreign ownership are shelved. The system bends toward protecting the interests of blocs rather than the needs of all. Canadians who raise their voices are often silenced. Critics are labelled racist or intolerant, shutting down meaningful debate. This leaves locals feeling isolated and voiceless. Trust in government erodes further each year. Many Canadians now see politics as a game that excludes them, where their votes count less than those of organised communities. The silence of leaders has consequences. It sends a message that the struggles of locals are secondary and that their place in the province is negotiable. This fuels resentment, division and a sense of betrayal that runs deep. Canadians wonder, if their own leaders won't defend them, who will? For many, this silence confirms what they already fear. BC has been sold out and they've been left behind. Part 6. Locals fight back. Despite the challenges, some Canadians are determined not to surrender. Grassroots movements are rising, demanding fairness in jobs, housing and governance. One of the loudest demands is for stricter controls on foreign ownership. Locals want caps on how much property non-residents can buy, as well as taxes that make speculation less profitable. In the job market, calls are growing for anti-discrimination laws that specifically target hiring bias. Canadians argue that jobs should go to the best candidate, not just to members of ethnic networks. Communities are also organizing online. Social media is filled with stories from locals sharing how they've been pushed aside in housing, jobs, and politics. These voices, amplified, are forcing the issue into broader conversation. Some Canadians are stepping into politics themselves. Running for local office, they pledge to represent native-born residents and push policies that prioritize fairness. This fight is not easy. Critics accuse these movements of being anti-immigrant, but supporters insist their cause is about equality, not exclusion. Their message is clear: diversity should not mean replacement. More protests and rallies are taking place. From city halls to community centres, locals are making their voices heard, even if the establishment resists. The resilience of these groups shows that Canadians are not giving up quietly. They are determined to preserve their identity and their stake in BC's future. The fight is about more than policies. It's about belonging. Canadians want assurance that they still have a place in the province they built. The outcome remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the struggle for British Columbia's future has only just begun. British Columbia is standing on the edge of chaos. Locals are losing jobs, homes, and trust in their leaders, while Indian and Chinese influence grows stronger every day. But silence helps no one. What do you think? Are Canadians being unfairly pushed out, or is this just the price of globalization? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. And if you believe this truth needs to be heard, smash that like button, share this video with everyone you know, and hit subscribe to join the fight for Canada's future. Together we can make sure the truth is never silenced.